All right. How cool is this? The official unboxing of Joni Mitchell Archives Volume 2, the Reprise Years 1968 to 1971. What a thrill. My name is Sam Stone. I'm a Joni Mitchell superfan, and I'm thrilled to be here with Patrick Milligan, who has been working with Joni to co-produce the Joni Mitchell Archives, which is a career-spanning series of album remasters and, for the super fans out there, rarities from Joni Mitchell's personal vault. Patrick, thanks for sharing the screen, and tell us a little bit about what you got there.
My pleasure. Well, we have a copy of the first Joni Mitchell Archives LP box set. We didn't do one for Volume 1, but we did one for Volume 2, and it's a thing of beauty. I have it right here. You can see
Wow. Fantastic.
that beautiful Graham Nash photo that is just reproduced. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's just really reproduced perfectly. It's beautiful. And Lisa Glines, our art director and designer, did a beautiful job as usual. Same kind of design as the CD box that I'm sure you're familiar with the blue foil highlights, and but that is the outside of it. There opens in the what they call cigarette box style.
Very nice.
A little bit of bubble wrap to prevent the contents from shifting during shipping. And then we have in the front the booklet, which is as in the CD box set. Would you like me to show you each of the LPs?
Sure. I was thinking we could go through.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the first disc. Recognize these photos from the Song to a Seagull and Reprise early promo sessions. And again, when you see this, it's just the printing on this and the detail is just really incredible. Lisa did an amazing job. And of course, you know, through this whole process, all of this stuff is being shown to and chosen with Joni. So all of this is completely with her input. So this, like you said, this is the same as the beginning of the first CD in the set, which contains some early home recordings, including 2 versions of Midnight Cowboy, which I think fans are excited to finally have. Some of the recordings from Jane Laurie's apartment in Chelsea, New York City, which are sort of peppered throughout this set from different time periods when Joni visited there in New York.
That's the Chelsea Morning famous apartment.
That is the one, yes. It was Joni's apartment. She shared with Jane for a while, and then when Joni moved out here, Jane kept it, and Joni stayed with her when she went. Had a piano there, and Jane had the foresight to record all those things, thinking they might be historical, and she was right. So then this first LP ends with 3 songs from the Song to a Seagull session, which are Jeremy, featured on the first set in an incomplete home recording. And then early versions of Conversation that contains an extra verse, and Both Sides Now. That was recorded for but not used for Song to a Seagull, which just in itself is kind of fascinating because I think fans have always wondered why that waited till the second album to come out, since that was sort of her well-known signature song. Okay, so that's disc 1. Let me find a place to cast this on. Disc 2, which is this great live photo of Joni with an awesome Ampeg Portaflex bass amp right there. This continues some of the Song to a Seagull sessions with The Gift to the Magi studio recording, more Jane Laurie, and a song called It's Easy. That is, you know, issued here for the first time, but it's pretty amazing thing to hear. And then something we're calling Another Melody, which is just Joni kind of improvising and coming up with ideas. We had the full Live at Canterbury House in October of 1967 on Volume 1, but we also have a March 1968 Canterbury House show that we have a couple of songs here, Jeremy and Songs to Aging Children come. And then the second side begins the famous Les Hibou Coffee House tape recorded in Ottawa by Jimi Hendrix. And as you know, that was something that Joni mentioned to Cameron in the notes to the first set. And in between that coming out and us working on the second set, somebody came forth with the tape. So that was particularly exciting. And Joni was really thrilled by that.
Fantastic. That is, mythological, this is
It absolutely is
beyond historical. It's because the story was that those tapes were they were stolen and presumed lost forever, right?
Yeah, because Jimmy went to the show, he got Joni's permission to record it, and then they hung out afterwards, late in the hotel, playing music, listening to the tapes, getting in trouble for making too much noise. And then, from what I understand, I think it's the next day, but it's shortly after, the tape and the recorder and other Jimmy's equipment was stolen from the van. So the tape ended up with an engineer who transferred the tapes of a tape collector that had his family, he had passed away and his family donated the tapes to the National Archives. And when he was copying the tape, he realized that it was Joni, certainly, and then put together that that's, what the tape was and got it to us. And Joni listened to it and, she was kind of like, well, how do I know that's it? And there's a point where, as you've heard, she says something about last time I was in Ottawa. So she confirmed that's what it was. So.
Wow. Just fantastic. So she was involved in the curation, but also was she involved in the design of this 10 LP box set as well?
Absolutely. Every step of everything. I mean, Lisa Glines, again, our very, very talented art director, has a really great relationship with Joni, goes up and shows her things, samples of colors and different photos to choose from, design elements. And so Joni has a hand in all of it. She looks at everything and she signs off on it all. So she's very, very hands-on with that. And with the music, definitely too. That's something that, I kind of sift through to give something to propose to her to listen to, but she listens to every minute of it and considers it. And so, okay, here we have what are we on now? The third disc, which is more of the Les Hibou Coffee House Ottawa tape. This beautiful Joel Bernstein photo on the cover. Again, just amazingly beautifully reproduced. So. Okay. Now onto the fourth LP. A familiar photo, but a great one, and again, beautifully reproduced. So here we start with a studio session that was done at Western and is a recording of Come to the Sunshine. Some more Jane Willard recordings, including a really fascinating bit of Joni discussing her second album, which was shortly after the first one came out and long before the second one was really conceived. And when you hear her talk about it, she had a very different idea of what that album might have been, including just the whole concept of the songs. And then her talking about Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross early on, and what an influence it was and how it directly influenced the following song, The Pirate of Venice.
Sure. Yeah, she said that Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross were basically her Beatles in the way that they were idolized at the time. She was idolizing the jazz records. And we talked a little bit about, while it's kind of understood that Court and Spark in 1974 has been considered sort of the arrival of that era, if there ever were really eras in her career. So it's really interesting that so many years earlier, she's talking about Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross being an influence on Pirate of Penance. And I mean, it's just fascinating that Jane had those recordings, and it really is a beautiful glimpse at not just the rare songs, but a glimpse into her creative process. That's, I mean, as far as storytelling and compiling this set, it's amazing to have those little bits in there as well.
Yeah, I thought so too. Because, kind of going through those initially thinking, oh, there's just bits of her talking, and then listening to it and going, this is, revealing. And I think people would be fascinated by this. And she enjoyed it too. So she was happy to have it on. Then we have a September 1968 Top Gear BBC radio broadcast with hosted by John Peel, who does sort of intercut intros and outros. But it's interesting because Chelsea Morning and Night in the City is with the John Cameron Group. So songs that were, pretty stripped down on their released versions. I mean, certainly Night in the City had, bass and piano on it, but Chelsea Morning. So John Cameron was the arranger and keyboard player who played on a lot of the Donovan hits at that time. Jennifer, Juniper, and things like that. So you can kind of hear that approach to these, which is fascinating, and probably reinforces that the way Joni did them on the records and released them, and we all know them, was the right way to go, because she always, had the perfect taste and knew what was best. Then side 8 starts the several sides of Live at Carnegie Hall from February 1969. This is a show that was recorded by Reprise at the time, and was initially considered to be her second album. And this is pretty much her full set at the time, doing songs from her full repertoire, but songs from the first album. And I've seen some tapes that were cut down with her handwriting of what the album would have been. And it's basically, as one would have done, she took the songs from Song to a Seagull pretty much out of the running, and was going to cut between Carnegie Hall and the Berkeley show, which was 2 weeks later, and which we intercut a few songs on here as well, just because of technical issues with the Carnegie Hall show. So that's that disc. And then we go on to disc 5, which is 2 more sides of Carnegie Hall. Joel Bernstein took this photo when he was in high school. He was invited by Joni to come shoot the concert because he had seen Joni at folk clubs and several times, knew all of her songs, knew how to play them, knew her tunings, and was getting into photography, and took pictures of her and developed them and took them and showed them to her, and she loved them. So she personally invited him to Carnegie Hall to take photos. And of course, the idea being that because they were thinking of it as an album, that his photos would be featured on the album. So here, some 53 years later or whatever, it's an album cover, which, Joel is really excited about. It turned out beautifully. And he just got nominated for Best Cover Photo for the Making Vinyl Awards. So that's exciting too. But as you probably recognize, this is also the photo that's on the 3LP Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, so there's a little bit more vinyl for vinyl fans to choose from. There's the mega set with 10 LPs, and then the breakout is the 3LP Carnegie Hall show. There's a limited edition on white vinyl, standard or wide release black vinyl. I think it's over my shoulder somewhere there. Fantastic set. And so it's the same. I wanted to ask a little bit about the sources for the set. These are all the same high resolution sources that were used for the CD as well?
Absolutely, yes. And cut by Bernie Grunman, same as the LPs were mastered, or the CDs were mastered by Bernie too. So, but as you can see too, another thing that's kind of nice about the use of this photo in the set is that it's just the full photo with no type. So you just get to see that on some, but it's such a beautiful photo, and just little Joni there, kind of off to the side on the big, huge Carnegie Hall stage. So. All right. The next disc, which is LP6, continues Carnegie Hall and features yet another photo of Joel's from Carnegie Hall. And then we go into a couple of outtakes from the Clouds sessions, which another version of Conversation. Interesting that she did that for the first 2 albums, but didn't use it until the 3rd. And then Blue Boy, another song that was held till the next album, although performed at the Carnegie Hall. So um, that's that one. And then we have, I guess this is disc 7 now, right? Yes. With another amazing Graham Nash photo. Isn't that
Just
such a cool photo?
stunning, amazing. That's one of my favorite photos.
Yeah,
of anybody.
I agree. Well, the cover of the box too, I love that photo. And the thing about that is when we were talking about this set, when we started talking about volume 2 and what might be a good photo, Joni without hesitation said, I know what I want to use. And it was this one, and we asked Graham, and he was immediately like, "Yes, by all means." So she really loves that photo too. But this one is such a great photo. Graham's such a good photographer. This continues with Cloud Sessions with an early version of The Priest, also held to the next album. More Jane Lurie apartment recordings, including here we have the song Jesus, which is a song previously unheard, and one that Joni is particularly fond of. She'd completely forgotten about it, and as we were working on volume 1, she actually had that recording and played it for us. And just was really excited for that to finally get used and do something with that. So that's
what an experience to have Joni play a completely unheard, undocumented song that no one had, that even she had forgotten about. What an experience.
It was a life moment, and one that at the time I was like, do I believe this is really happening? But yeah, it was pretty cool. Then we have the Dick Cavett show from August 18th, the one that Joni missed Woodstock to make sure she made, even though obviously members of CSNY made it there in time. But we have her performances on that and conversations with Dick Cavett. Then we follow with an early Ladies of the Canyon demo, which is Joni doing Woodstock on acoustic piano rather than electric piano. And then a few songs from Joni's appearance at the Centennial Auditorium in Saskatoon, Going Home. She played there, I think, earlier that year as well. She did 2 shows, but and there's recordings of both of them. But this is interesting, her reading a poem, As I Lie in My Backyard Thinking, on August 2nd, which is in her book. Version of Rose's Blue and Rainy Night House. All right, so we are on disc 8 now. And here is a beautiful Henry Diltz photo from Laurel Canyon. We've seen a lot of these in color and black and white. Joel Bernstein was there this day and has pictures of Joni from the same photo shoot. In fact, there's a great Henry Diltz photo of Joel taking a photo of Joni, which is cool. And here's the back, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at the similar to the design of the previous boxes and the CD. So here we have some Ladies of the Canyon sessions, including some newly heard bits, Ladies of the Canyon with additional cellos. Of course, the master has some cello parts, but there were many more recorded that weren't used, so we have that. And then Blue Boy, that had an extended sort of recorder and electric piano coda that wasn't used and was kind of fascinating to hear. Then we start getting into the Blue material, a BBC TV show from September of '70 with Joni doing a very embryonic version of All I Want, which is several different lyrics, just a very different feel. It's got a very almost more frantic vibe to it than the sort of more laid back version on the album. And then we have some sessions that were done before the actual album recordings, or demo sessions for Blue, Case of You with some alternate lyrics, and then a solo version of California. Then on side 2 we have a couple of tracks from the Greenpeace and Chitka concert. No, we don't. It's actually a medley when I say a couple of songs, but that concert, at least part of it, has been on CD before. But here we have Joni's medley of Big Yellow Taxi into Boney Maroney, which is a lot of fun. Okay, so then after that, we go into the first of several sides of the, I would say, historic BBC radio in concert from October of 1970, with Joni doing several songs from Blue, which of course were not out yet. In fact, some of them weren't even recorded yet. And as we get into further sides, as you will see from this beautiful cover photo here, Joni is joined by James Taylor for several songs that are just really exquisite. I think I maybe told you this before, but the BBC show was something that I sent to Joni kind of in advance of the full sort of setup of the set, and she loved it and just said, "Oh, that might be the best thing I ever did. My intonation is so good." Like, your intonation's always good. But she was particularly just thrilled with how great she and James sounded together and just how well they meshed, and just kind of that they should have done more of that. So so that's really a treat. And I will say that while that has been bootlegged different times, the whole show has never been bootlegged. It was never even completely broadcast. And some of the bootlegs and the transcription discs that exist that are in stereo, this is in mono, but it's the complete show. And they have additional James Taylor solo tracks on them. Those actually come from James's 1970 TV and concert show. So I think people have misconstrued that, hey, there's songs missing because James did songs too. It's like, no, only on that later cut of that for a broadcast.
Interesting. It's good to have that kind of made catalog, you know, a Joni Mitchell official version of this.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's nice that we don't have to rely on, you know, sort of dodgy YouTube rips anymore.
Absolutely. All right, here's the final and 10th disc, which is another beautiful Graham Nash photo. He certainly had a way of capturing her in sort of intimate moments where, but just beautifully. So this concludes the BBC show and the last couple of James Taylor songs, which includes You Can Close Your Eyes, the song that James wrote for Joni. And that is, you know, Joni was on the album, the Mudslide Slim album that was on, but not on that track. And here too, she's actually singing lead and James is singing harmony. So it's just really, really beautiful. And then the last side are 3 alternate or outtakes from the Blue session, which is Hunter, a song that was on the Carnegie Hall show and some live shows before that. It was also recorded for Ladies of the Canyon, but this one had a little bit more production done to it. River with French horns that were unused on the final version, which again shows that Joni made the right decision. That's how that record should be, how we know it. But it's fascinating to just hear other things that she was considering, just that, you know, as she's, you know, working through her various releases, she's trying more things out in the studio. So it's kind of, you know, interesting to hear her making records and the choices that she makes. And then the final track is Urge for Going, which we know is the B-side to You Turn Me On the Radio. It's the same recording, recorded for Blue, but decided not to be used for there. But with a beautiful string quartet. This is one actually when Joni heard it, she really loved it. She said, "Wow, that's beautiful. I wonder why I didn't use it." And I kind of wonder if she had used it on Blue, if maybe she would have used it that way. But by the time she got to the single, she just, you know, decided to make it more simple. I don't know that.
Sure.
I'm curious.
So Hunter and Urge for Going had been planned for Blue, and what it was at some point, probably late in the game, there was a change in the sequence, and it's the album that we know and love.
Yeah, it was actually the record with those 2 songs was pretty much done by the end of 1970. And so All I Want and The Last Time I Saw Richard were done like early 71, but, you know, a few months in. So definitely something that maybe after she sat with a while, she just decided, you know, I don't know if I want to use those X and other songs. The thing that's interesting about Hunter too, though, is that it was being considered as a single before too, even the Carnegie Hall version. So it was something, I think that it was a track that she liked, or thought that maybe it had some, you know, some wheels, but it just kind of just never made the final cut of anything, and sort of took until the Greenpeace concert is probably the first time people heard that, I'm guessing, officially released. Yeah.
He's always making these really deliberate, choices that benefit the final product. I mean, we've talked about it before that though that having that song on Blue could have been a little bit out of place, maybe too close to the feel of This Flight Tonight, or so she's always making these very interesting choices, whether to withhold a song for a different album where it might make more sense conceptually, that these things are all very fully realized.
Yeah, very definitely. I think, as we talked about before, from the very first album, everything was really sort of a full statement and seen, conceptually as a thing. And so that's sort of how she thought of it, very sort of Miles Davis, Frank Sinatra.
Sure. And she's treating the Archives project in the same way, that this is a creative pursuit as much as it is a historical presentation of another side of her work.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a bit before. I think this is a great thing that she's getting to make records, just there's, making decisions, musical decisions, artistic decisions, providing artwork, and, it's like how she kind of always did it. So just continuing on.
Mm-hmm. And for folks of, my age bracket, this is, I love Joni Mitchell, I would say probably more than any artist. And for the extent that I've, been in love with her music, there has not been new material. There was a live show where there was a new poem recited, which was beautiful. But aside from that, there's not really been something like completely unheard, like It's Easy or Jesus or something like that. So, for a whole generation of fans, this is like, finally it has arrived. And I know for so many fans that have, really hoped that this would happen, this really is a dream come true to have any amount of vault material, but especially a career spanning series of several box sets. It's really a mind-blowing experience for everybody.
Yeah, well, that's great. It's fun to get to do it and be involved, because I'm a fan too, and I feel the same way. I feel really fortunate that we're all allowed to finally get to hear this stuff in pretty generous chunks at a time too, which is really, really nice. And just, the way that it sort of flows to tell the story too. I mean, over the course of all these sets and her career, but just even within each set, I think it's a fascinating arc. And each set will have a different arc and a different flavor, which, is very much like the arc of her career. So it's very fitting.
Fantastic. It's a triumph. This set is really an amazing dive into such an important part of her career. And now to get this other side of it and see the creative process behind these albums that are so timeless and so important to all of us, it's just a thrill. So thanks to you and the team, and of course to Joni for making this happen. It's really rather miraculous. And so vinyl fans out there are going to want to clear the shelf for sure and make some space for the 10 LP box set.
Considerable amount of space, I would say. It's a hefty piece, I'll tell you that.
Sure, a porch crusher, as they call it.
Exactly.
So it's out on February 18th, the 10 LP box set, exclusive to Joni Mitchell's online storefront at store.jonimitchell.com, limited to 4,000 pieces. I'm told there are a few left, so get your orders in while you can. It's a fantastic collection. Thank you so much, Patrick, for
Thank you, Sam.
Taking us through the set and for all the work that you and the team and Joni have put into this really fantastic series.
The thrill of a lifetime, I got to tell you. My pleasure.